Hey guys, it's Tuesday. So like last week, I'm gonna keep this video pretty short so I don't have to do much editing because I have homework and I have to balance that. Someone is talking outside my apartment. Great. So I guess for this week's video, I wanted to talk about, I know that we're not like doing themes anymore and it's supposed to be just like vlogging, but my life is very boring. And surprisingly enough, not a lot of like LGBT related stuff happens other than the fact that I am always bisexual. That's about it. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about a topic that I've been thinking about a lot, which is phases, and how sometimes when you identify as bisexual or pansexual or asexual or even like gay and lesbian, people think, or even trans or some other variation of a different gender identity than you were born with. Some people think it's a phase. So what I wanted to cover was that, one, for the majority of us, it's not a phase, and this is who we are, and this is how we're going to be for the rest of our lives. But for some people, it is a phase. And I think the problem isn't the problem is that it's being treated as a phase, but it's also that it's being treated as a bad thing. Like, if you go through this phase, then it's a bad thing. That's what it's being treated like. It's a bad thing. And I wanted to just address that a little bit because for the longest time, I say the longest time, but for a while I didn't know I could be bisexual. I didn't know bisexual was an option, per se. I didn't know that you could identify that way because I thought you had to be attracted to one sex or the other. So when I found out that bisexual was a thing, I stopped identifying as a lesbian and started identifying as bisexual. So it was a phase in my life where I identified as a lesbian. Granted, it was because I had lack of a better word, but there are some people who go through phases in which they either identify themselves incorrectly, like if they didn't know that a word existed, then they identify as a word that they know that exists, and that's okay. There's some people who, I don't know if any of you have ever come out or had friends come out and their mom or dad or friend or whatever is like, oh yeah, I had a lesbian phase. Well, your dad wouldn't say that, but I don't know your dad. He might have had a lesbian phase. But look at me laughing at my own joke. I'm so lame. Yeah, so it's just that it's treated like a bad thing. And I think the fact that people are allowed to be attracted to people of their same sex, even if they're not gay or lesbian or they don't identify that way. Like, maybe you're straight and you're like, oh, like maybe you're a straight girl and you're like, oh, that girl is actually really attractive. Maybe you go through a phase of thinking that you're bisexual or a lesbian. But then you're like, oh, no, that was just that one instance or a couple of instances. I think it's okay to go through phases because everyone goes through a phase at some point in their life. And that's just what life is in general, is a phase, is one huge phase of people trying to figure themselves out because no one has themselves figured out. And if you think that you do, or if you think, if you think that you do, then you probably don't. And if you think that other people do, you're wrong because no one has it figured out, and no one is going to stop going through different changes in their life because things keep happening. The world doesn't stop for anyone, and everyone goes through different cycles in their life. So if you go through a gay phase, I don't think that you should treat it as a bad thing. I don't think anyone should treat it as a bad thing. Because I think it's okay for a straight girl to admit, hey, yeah, girls are hot. Or a straight guy to admit, hey, yeah, guys are hot. Or someone to, I don't know. Maybe you're going through like a gender crisis, and then you come out of it and you're like, okay, well, I'm cis, but for a while I was identifying as gender fluid, or however you identify, whatever phase you go through. I think it's okay to go through phases. I mean, like I said, everyone goes through phases. Your life is a series of going through phases. And so I do agree that when someone comes out, that it shouldn't be treated like a phase. I don't think it should be dismissed as a phase. But I also think that it shouldn't, that if it is a phase, it shouldn't be treated like a bad thing. Because what does it do, really? It just opens people up to the possibility of same-sex relationships or same-gender relationships or whatever. It's like, you know, people who might go through these phases then realize, oh, well, this is sort of what it's like. Like, I get a taste of what it's like to be a gay man or a lesbian woman or whoever, because they went through part of that, or they were identifying as that in that moment. I think it's okay. It's totally okay to have phases and to go through life not sure of what you're going to do next, because that's just what life is. And yeah, I don't know, I'm just kind of rambling now. Yeah, I guess I'll end it with that. Like, no one has their shit figured out, and phases are not a bad thing. It is always okay to go through a phase, whether it be gender related, sexual identity related, or, you know, anything else. Whatever phase you go through, you learn from it. And that's the important part. Yes. I will end it with that. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.